Hey guys, Will King here again from High Cotton Homes. We're in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. We're actually here at a slab house that we're finishing up. We're in the last few weeks here of banging this thing out and getting done with it. But we wanted to take a little bit of time today and really bring up the conversation of one, the difference between a crawl space and a slab foundation, but then really dive into the crawl space and how those have changed in the last 20 or 30 years. Again, my good friend Todd's here from Synergy, Todd Witt. He's been doing energy performance stuff in our houses for almost 2 years now, and what, 7 years, 8 years into the
seven, and I started crawl spaces. I built probably the first encapsulated crawl space about 15 or 16 years ago that I know of in Alabama, maybe the Southeast.
And that was probably well before the day of all these companies that are doing it.
I was a crazy guy, everybody said.
Yeah, there's I think everybody's had the horror story of going into a wet crawl space, and actually we get that a lot from customers when they talk about, when we ask what do you have, what do you want, a slab house or a crawl space house, their immediate answer on a lot of people, a slab, I don't want to have moisture problems. So I think it's basically educating the generation that's building houses now, and I guess changing the culture of what we're doing. To tell people that we can indeed build a crawl space the right way. That's something that has gone to the wayside, I think.
And really, there's a bunch of different issues. There's structural issues, drainage issues. If it's one story versus two, so there's a bunch of things we get into, and there's not a right or wrong answer. It seems like maybe in North Alabama, the higher end houses maybe gravitate towards crawl spaces.
Right. You get into lake houses, and elevation plays a big difference.
We don't do a lot of basements, but a decent amount of basements. But with my experience with crawl spaces, it just gives us a lot more room to get the duct work, and that's what I'm mostly concerned about, is getting the duct work in there.
I guess to start off real fast, the difference between a slab house and a crawl space house. There's people out there that might not know the difference, and what we're on today is actually a slab house, and basically in that slab there might be plumbing and drain lines, water lines, and maybe some electrical if it's routed to an island, but nothing else is located in that slab. It's just basically...
Definitely not duct work in Alabama. You don't want to put ducts.
It would create a sweaty mess. But it's basically on top of the footer on our slabs houses. We pour footers, we block it up, we backfill with gravel, and then they get a 4-inch slab. Then from there on up is the house. So that's the basic of what a slab house is. An elevated slab or slab on grade is a common terminology. But then the crawl space, though, it's actually a block foundation that comes up, and then we've set floor joists, and so you have a 36, 48-inch space below your floor in your crawl space for locating all the mechanicals that we're talking. And it gives you more options.
Installers always say add 1 or 2 more blocks. It always helps us, but
because they're not paying for it, right? And they're always like, add 3 more blocks.
Exactly.
They don't care what it costs.
And I don't even know what the code requirements are on height, but usually what we deal with is average probably 3.5, 4 feet, and the biggest problem we're facing here is looking at the code book. If you look at it, it's a code written for our whole nation. And we're saying we need crawl space ventilation. Well, the worst thing we can do is bring outside warm, humid air into a cool crawl space in Alabama. Right. We're going to get major issues. And once again, we're talking about Alabama in the Southeast. But it's just like having a cold drink. You bring hot air to it, and it's going to sweat, and it's going to be your duct work. It's going to be hardwood floors, cupping and buckling. It's going to be mold, mildew. The moisture is going to breed it's going to breed dust mites, which is going to cause you a lot of issues inside the house. Breathing, asthma's on the rise. And then over time, if you leave it too long, that moisture and mold and fungus is going to get into the wood structure.
Starts decaying those joists. Exactly. You get sags in the floor.
And then you start getting into companies that are coming in and doing foundation repair, and you start looking at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 where you could have, for $3,000 to $4,000 initially, you could have saved yourself a lot of headaches.
That's what I tell customers on the front end when they talk about encapsulating it. Of course, they want to know the expense of it, and I say, well, I won't build a crawl space now without doing the full encapsulation. It's against any building science that you read. The code book might not reflect it right now here, but so that's one point. But the other point is, it's definitely an expense up front. But like you just said, it's so much cheaper on the front end to encapsulate one the right way, waterproof it the right way, than coming in 10 years.
For sure,
and basically eating a lot of cost up.
One of the things we just got through talking about is the foam upstairs and getting your ducts into the conditioned space. Well, my house is a one-story, my personal house, and I have an encapsulated crawl space. So when we lay out your air conditioning design, once we get the house drawn out, we hit a button and show you a vented crawl space versus non-vented crawl space, and it's a humongous difference. Then when you start looking at putting your ducts in a conditioned crawl space versus a vented attic, it is unbelievable. A lot of times it's 75%. So it really saves you money on your utility bills. You have warm floors.
Right.
You don't have structural issues. It's just so much stuff. But termites, though, that's one of the things we want to consider when we're doing crawl spaces, is that in the South, when we start encapsulating, a lot of the termite companies are still living in the 50s or 60s, 70s, and they're still giving, no, you need more foundation vents, and you don't need.
Well, they're selling them.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're selling
exactly.
them. Yeah.
That's how it's still the Alabama Pest Control Association. Their manager, their program is, if you have termites, it's to come in and put motorized and foundation vents in. So it's just a lot of bad building science and
well, the basic of that science is the goal in a crawl space is to have you say below 70, at worst case 70%, probably more towards 50 is the ideal spot. So why in Alabama would we open vents up in the summer and bring in 90% or 100% humidity?
Because we always have.
That simple science just does not work.
We always have, and that's why I see people putting motorized foundation vents to fight problems, and they're actually more problems.
Yeah. If a little bit don't fix it, we can just throw more air to it.
It's amazing. And then the other contraptions. So one of the things we can talk about later is commercial grade dehumidifiers, and we install those. I have one in my personal house, and my humidity in my house is 30%.
Right.
And I always tell people, let's try to make your nose bleed, and then we'll worry about the moisture.
It's like being in Colorado.
That's our goal, is to get that humidity as low as we can.
So I guess to tell everybody how we do it different from the beginning. So I guess one thing that we do is after our footers are poured and we start laying block, one thing is when my block masons start laying our block, I give them sleeves so they can actually place it into the block and mortar around it the right way. Right. And that helps a lot, because if they don't do that, then the plumber comes in, he just knocks the hole out. Sure. That's all he can do. So we have the walls laid, with sleeves already in them. So that's important. And then we have a company that comes in and sprays the outside of the block with a waterproofing agent. So that right there stops moisture from coming in, just like you would a basement. It's the same product, the same process. And depending on the lay of the land, we even do French drains on the perimeter. Sure. We just do that. It's site specific, if you want to call it that. So we waterproof the outside, and obviously there's no vents. That's one thing that people will notice, is that we don't turn the block sideways to allow for that vent. And then once the foundation's built, we put down a layer of what we call sacrificial plastic.
It's one of these things, is there's as much as 10 to 15 gallons of moisture come out of the ground each day, and we just want to lay down just a cheap layer of plastic and get most of that moisture stopped. We've got to watch when it is raining during construction, if the house gets blacked in, water's going to pool, so we don't want it pooling on top. So you can cut a few slits.
But it's amazing just how much moisture that stops. Just a simple, it's not taped, it's just laid down there. but that alone stops. And two, you didn't point out 2 crawl space openings.
We love to get a cross breeze going through it during construction, which that kind of sounds funny as we don't want to be bringing moisture, but it just seems like if we allow air to move through it in a crosswind during construction with that plastic, it helps it. But so many times I get under a house that's 3 to 4 months old or just been during construction, and it's literally aquarium underneath, and there's mold and slime and
it happens. I mean, that fast.
Like that.
I was amazed. I called you in panic one day. It's like, what did we do wrong? But you just learn by experiencing that. But that's so basically now you got that sacrificial layer down during construction. So now we finished the house and we're getting close to we're running mechanicals. All those guys get their stuff in. The HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical, whatever's down there. And then you guys come back. So we call and say, hey, Todd, we're ready for you to come back. And then y'all do the plastic and the foam.
We're going to look real quick and make sure that everything's draining correctly. We've got, one of the first things you can start with the foundation is if you dig it out and your interior grade's lower than your exterior. And then a lot of these high-end houses we do, for some reason, they don't want to put gutters on it. So automatically these houses are becoming pools. Right. We want to make sure we're getting that. We're getting the grading. We're doing all the stuff that y'all are really good at doing. And then we come in, and then we'll put a 10 mil plastic down on the ground, seal it up. We offer 20, but 10 mil is the most cost-effective. 20 if you really want to do it perfect. We lap it up the walls, we bring it to your piers, and then we actually spray 1.5 or 2 inches of closed cell foam. Right. And that's different from open cell. We do not want open cell in a crawl space. We want the closed cell. We're going to leave a termite viewing strip for all the termite companies, and then we're going to get your rim joist all around it. And what that does is then if your ducts leak, it's leaking into the house. It's completely sealed up. We've stopped the moisture. It's just, my house is 15 years old, and I promise you can go to it now and take a sleeping bag under it, and you would go to sleep under your crawl space. It's that clean.
And that's the way it should be. And that's what I tell people, the temperature, the humidity, the cleanliness of it, it really should be comparable to the environment that you're living in, because all that's separating you and the crawl space is a piece of floor.
Exactly, and that's why by having the 2 spaces, we actually eliminate any pressure differences and actually leakage between the 2. But the one thing we also put in our house is we have a monitor that we put in the crawl space. And it's a high growth thermometer. It reads the humidity and the temperature in the crawl space. And then we have the monitor that shows up inside your house. Mine's by my coffee pot. Every morning when I get up, I see my humidity in my crawl space in my house, and then I see my temperature. And most of the time they're about the same. And we know if it ever spikes that, hey, we've got a plumbing leak or we've got an issue, or you'll see swings from spring to fall. And even that's why it gets back to putting the whole house as a system and designing the air conditioning to remove all this moisture. But in the spring and fall, when it's 70 degrees outside, that's when having that dehumidifier really helps the overall.
And we've put those, your commercial grade dehumidifier in every house, and it's amazing. Just like the air conditioner unit, the condensate drain, those things pump out a lot of water. And this time of the year, it's raining every day, it's hot, it's driving moisture. Those things really make a difference.
Dehumidifiers, a lot of times, you can't just put it in your crawl space without sealing it up correctly, but a dehumidifier is a major problem. It's a problem solver in a lot of crawl spaces.
Yeah, I tell you, you got to start it also doing the basically one or two fresh air, or not fresh air, it's just supply ducts into the crawl space. And I think we got about 20 CFMs in the crawl space, or is there a? Yeah,
there's a formula, and I don't even know it right off the head.
It provides a little bit of fresh air and positive pressure, right?
In a new house, we're required by codes to put supplies under there. I don't believe in a return in your crawl space. Right. Now we'll leave some of the penetration so that air can get moved back to the unit, but by putting supply only, we're putting positive pressure on that plastic. And by putting positive pressure, we're never sucking radon or outside air. And that's one of the things y'all do is y'all put a radon vent on every house. And it's actually by putting the pipe through the roof, by pushing down on the plastic, we're pushing the radon out of the grout and out of the house. So
we actually do just the pipe would be the passive system. And we've done those, but now every house that we're doing gets that actual active system, because if anybody looks on a map in Alabama or the map of the United States on radon, the northwestern corner of Alabama is just solid red. And so it's a $200 investment that can protect you from radon. So
and a lot of times after the fact, that's 5 to 6. I've sat through the class. I just didn't do it. It's a lot of work, and a $200 pipe to begin with versus $5,000 or $6,000. And a lot of the real estate companies are starting to require one, or when a house is sold to a second owner. But
they're doing tests.
Exactly.
The home inspections now.
Exactly.
That's common. I ran into that on a recent family sale of a house.
And the other way all this ties back is where we've talked about air condition. We've talked about the thermal envelope, and we've talked about bringing fresh air in and having jumper ducts or allowing the air to move freely. Right. By doing that, we've actually put positive pressure on the house, and we eliminate a lot of the radon issues, a lot of the moisture issues, and what we've kind of do is there's overlapping levels of safety. There's not just one. If it fails, we're dead. There's a bunch of different levels to getting this house perfect.
Yeah, and that's we've done some houses recently on crawl spaces, and if a customer has a tighter budget and they don't want to spend as much money on insulation, if they, the ones that have done crawl spaces, that we've basically shown them the manual J of the difference of just encapsulating that crawl space and locating all the ductwork in there. That's the important part, like getting inside that thermal envelope.
Exactly.
But just doing that alone is amazing, the difference on the load calculation. Even with normal insulation, it's not quite as efficient and tight as a spray foam house, but using that foam in the crawl space and locating the ductwork down there, it's amazing the difference.
Every foam guy in America is probably going to come after me for saying this, but I'm a spray foam guy. I sell spray foam. But if you do a 1-story crawl space, why spend that money if we're going to put your ducts in your crawl space and get the energy savings on that, and we encapsulate that? There's really no sense to do the rafters up top. And especially if it's a flat ceiling. There are cathedrals and vaults and things that call for spray foam. But if you have a flat ceiling, which my personal house is I have an encapsulated crawl space on my ducts, and that's the way to go. And that's the one thing we're going to tell you during that initial plan, and that's one of the cool things we offer your customers is we're able to lay these things out and show them, hey, this is the smarter, less expensive way to go.
We're now actually locating hot water heaters, tankless heaters. They have their own fresh air and exhaust because they're gas fired typically. But locating that there, it's a nice clean. It's almost like a nice basement. It's creating a space where you can locate more things there and not worry about rust problems and moisture issues.
Animals and this time of year, package units. If you know what a package unit was, where your whole unit is sitting outside, and it's usually where the ducts enter from the outside of the house. That's where insects start falling, then small animals start falling, and then snakes start falling. I'm not trying to scare anybody.
I've got all 3 in my house. I've got a package unit.
It's one of those things is once we seal it out, once we get the moisture out, and once we get it halfway conditioned, animals stop. And that's what you'll see too is when you start opening crawl space doors and encapsulate, you're not going to see spider webs and all the other animals and stuff that goes with it. So there's just so many overlapping benefits to it. It's just amazing. Well, if it's done correctly.
Right. I definitely want to take a look at a few that we've done and show some pictures. But anyway, I hope our customers can get a good idea. And actually on our website, we have an article on there about the differences between the two that kind of goes in a little more technical detail, especially the difference between the slab versus the crawl space. And then we also have information on there about how we encapsulate crawl spaces too, and more videos. And you have a ton of information on your site.
And grading that thing grading it correctly is you can do it now and not have me involved. And in most of the crawl spaces, the existing houses, we go in, we dig trenches, put French drains, we do sump pumps, we do clean the joist. I mean, we get into the middle to the upper teens on just a good sized crawl space, and for $2,000 to $3,000, it could have all been prevented. So.
Now, if somebody's out there and they have a house that's the traditional built crawl space, and they have that package unit, and they have all this, when they're having problems, you guys also do existing homes, right?
We won't sell you foundation vents to put in, but we'll come close your existing ones off and give you analysis. And that's the one thing too is we like all electric heat pumps. Yes. And and now with the gas water heaters, the on demand where they're air supplied. Their air is supplied to them.
It's a dual pipe. It's got an intake and
when we're not using an old style gas water heater or an old style furnace, then that keeps us from encapsulating the entire crawl space. So why would you want a combustion source under your house? Right. It kind of gets crazy, and I'm not out to bash gas, but let's just keep it simple. Let's not open up any cans of worms we don't have to have. Right. And that's one of the things.
Again, it goes back to our climate. You said earlier the main focus here really is the cooling in the. Exactly. I mean, our folks that are that might be listening up in Colorado or North Dakota and the northern climates. I mean, gas is crucial for those guys.
Well, but it's funny, the unit we just looked at for your carrier system. Heat pumps are taking over Minnesota and Vermont. I mean, it's amazing with spray foam. And when we get the house tight, good windows, and a great air condition, we're able to even do that with heat pumps. That was unheard of years ago. So
and the variable speed and the multi-stage. If you try to do that with a gas unit, the price really just gets out of control.
We talked about duct blast. If you have your ducts under your vented crawl space and you're in 10-degree weather, well, the unit's oversized, it cuts off. That heated air becomes 10-degree air, and then you get that blast of cold air. It runs for a few minutes and cuts off all day long. And our goal is, let's build the house tight, let's put a good heat pump in there, and let's just have it generate nice, warm, even temperatures. And it's just amazing. We're just making a big switch. People who never would ever have considered a heat pump are just so happy with them.
Right. We're trying hard to make a point here in the Shoals area to all the customers that we talk to of just, I guess, the new building science and the new techniques, and you guys y'all give us the ability to drive that home with them. So we really appreciate everything you guys do for us and teach us.
Well, we appreciate y'all being a good customer who's out here pushing it in day to day, because it's easy to want it and we can go look at your kitchen, but there's a lot of people who love those beautiful granite countertops and all the stuff you have in this house, but it's basically, we've got to take care of the stuff behind the scenes that you don't think of, and we're lucky that we do have builders like you who are out there pushing it to people.
That's good. And guys, like I said, if you need any questions, comments, you can drop comments below. Links to both of our sites are below. You can find us there. You can also give us an email or a call, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. But Todd, thanks again,
Thanks, Will.
man. I appreciate it all, and we'll see you on the next one.